My name is Mark Biddy Barnes, and tonight I'm sitting in with my guy, A.R. Hilton, director, screenwriter, book writer, felon. We behind the velvet rope, going really deep. This movie, Anonymous Killers, I think you should see it. I saw it twice, and it's an American story. Let's go. What's up, AR? How you
What
doing, my
up, what
brother?
up, what up? Happy to be here, man. Thanks for having me in the A Black Hollywood.
Yeah,
Appreciate the invite.
Absolutely. I appreciate the opportunity to sit down with you today, definitely got my energy up for this one. And I did my homework too.
Yeah, that's good.
So before we get started, let me tell you one thing. So anytime I do an interview, and I'm relatively new in the space, to be totally honest with you, but I do a deep dive research as much as I can. And so when I started doing research on you, I realized that one of my friends is one of your friends.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. And so I called him on the phone. I said, Joe, I saw you on his Instagram page. You follow him. You know this kid named A.R. Hilton? He said, oh, yeah, I know homie. I don't know him that well, but I know homie. I said, yo, tell me something about him. He said, yo, he was locked up with my man. He was locked up with Tone, who also is my man. And I was like, okay. He said, he's a stand-up dude. He's solid. Anytime I've been around the dude, he's been right. So I was like, okay, cool. And then he told me some other shit, or whatever that I won't say on here.
Yeah.
But I said, okay, that's good. That made me feel good to see that. So I said, okay, this might not be so bad at all. So I just wanted to share that with you before we get started.
6 degrees, man. We go back, we all voted in something.
Yeah. So where you from?
Mount Vernon, New York. Heavy D. Home of Heavy D. I'm from Mount Vernon, New York. Yeah.
Okay. So to get right to it, I think you were around 18 years old. You caught a Fed charge?
Yeah, I was I just turned 19 when I caught a Fed charge. I caught a Fed charge in '89. You know, that was the war on drugs when it cracked 100 to 1. So I got caught up in all of that and whatnot. And it was like I went in it blind, you know. I didn't really know, you know, we was just out doing what we was doing. We wasn't paying attention to the laws and know what was going on, the laws that was about to be like dropped on us. So like when I got arrested, I didn't even know. I thought it was something like, all right, I'm gonna get a bail, whatever. I'm just gonna, you know, but it wasn't that. It was the feds. And it was like, yo, and they told me how much time that and all of that. And it was like just crazy. It was like mind blowing. It's like, wow, like like a kick in the chest.
I can only imagine that. I grew up with a lot of people in my neighborhood. I grew up in Soundview. So a lot of people in my neighborhood, including my older brother, they were all on the block. So I definitely understand what you were dealing with. Absolutely.
All that.
Absolutely. So my question to you is, how long did it take you to accept the fact that you had to do 18 years?
I don't think it took forever, for real. It took forever. I never, in the beginning, you never really think like you young, you 19, you like, oh, I'm gonna get back, that this law is gonna change. You think all of these things and whatnot. And then after like probably like 9 or 10 years and whatnot, you start really like, yeah, I gotta figure things out. You know, you watch people go home, get murdered, you watch people go home and come back. So you see this revolving door, the graveyard in prison. And you start, you know, you really start trying to like figure things out, because a lot of this is people that you knew, that you bonded with in prison, and they going home either coming back or getting murdered. So it made me start really looking at trying to find a way out, another opportunity when I get out, a different way to do that could get me away from that life. And so it took a while. It probably took like I said, like 10 years for me to really start moving away from the idea of going back to the streets, the life that I'm.
Okay, so in your first, let's say your first 9 years, at least you did 18. So first 9 years, how were you spending your time in comparison to your last 9 years?
I stayed on the weight pad. Like I stayed lifting weights. I stayed reading. I was an avid reader.
Mm-hmm.
Attending sports events. I didn't really play basketball early. I started playing that later. I wasn't really into sports.
Mm-hmm.
I watched a lot of sports. I used to watch a lot of sports and just working out, reading every now and then. Then once I got on the phone and talked to somebody that was home and whatnot, I ran to the law library. You know, I didn't really like miss the outside world until would get on the phone and hear the things that was going on in the world, and then I would like yearn. And I run to the little library, and this old head in there, he'd be like, "Yo, what you was on the phone last night?" Like, yeah, he said, "You only come in here when you get on the phone and talk to somebody." It's like, so yeah, so most of that, that's what I was doing, is working out, lifting weights, reading a lot of books. I didn't get involved in religion in prison. I ain't do no religion or anything like that. It was mainly just books, working out, and just hanging out with the dudes from New York. You know, in the feds, everybody's New York, DC, whoever. You know, everybody's with their city, their state.
Okay, so did you do any writing, any book writing in jail?
Yeah, that's what firstly got me into writing was I co-authored a book. I ain't gonna say the name of the book because he went home and he put it out and he didn't give me no credit and all of that. So I'm not even gonna say the name of the book. But yeah, I co-wrote a book with a friend of mine that I had formed a bond with in prison, and that was my introduction to writing in prison. But my introduction to writing in the world was in the summer youth program when I was like 14 years old. I wrote for the local urban league. I wrote for their newsletter. So that was like my first time writing, like picking up a pen and writing professionally, be it, publicly. Let's put it like that. The urban league is not that professional.
Okay, so I like to bring pieces of a puzzle together, right? And so I'm going to bring a piece of a puzzle together. I want to show you something. Yeah. You can tell me about it, right? Here you go. Why don't you read it? What that says?
My mother painted seeds early in my life, and it planted seeds early in my life, and it was those seeds that sprouted later in life and sustained me in my times of need, that I could become who I needed to become.
Okay. So when I saw this, right, and in the midst of doing my homework, I saw that you wrote a few books.
Yeah.
And I said, wow, so this is life coming kind of like full circle, all the way back around to what your true purpose is supposed to be. And in doing my history on you, I feel like you are in the midst of your purpose right now. 100%. So how many books have you written to date?
I wrote two books. And the first book I wrote, That Life Prophecy of a Hustler, it was therapeutic for me because it was like kind of like we spoke briefly before the interview about Once Upon a Time in America being one of our favorite movies, something we share in common, a film that we really like. And so for me, this book, my first book was like a coming of age, an urban coming of age with me and my friends growing up in the 80s during the crack eras, our love life, the relationships, our home lives and all the things and how it affected us and played in the choices that we made on the street, which was like life or death choices.
Facts.
So that book for me was like helped me see as like a third person looking in at my life, looking back and writing it and the emotions that came with it and the disputes and how other people seen me in those moments and me being outside and being able to see myself. So that writing process was very therapeutic. So I wrote like two books, but once I started writing books, I wanted to do them into a movie. So I said, let me learn how to write screenplays. And so when I got the book and started learning, screenplays was much easier for me to write. So I just started writing screenplays. I really loved it. Like I could write a screenplay like in 2 weeks if I had a good idea and I was really like inspired by the idea. So I just started doing that because that's what I really wanted to do. I really wanted to do movies.
Okay. So writing books gave you the confidence to take that next step, basically.
Yeah.
Okay. How many movie scripts have you completed and directed?
I did a short film. That's the first thing I did. The short film, The Death of a Prince, in memory of my brother who got murdered at 18, a year after I came home. Mm-hmm. And scripts, I got like probably about 5 or 6 completed scripts that I wrote while I was in prison. I think they're all pretty unique. They all play on probably a movie that I seen growing up that I really like. So I would say about 6 and then 2 screenplays. And then 2 books and about 5 or 6 screenplays. And then I got like 2 or 3 that's incomplete that someday I'm going to sit down when I get time and complete them.
Okay. So in studying you, I caught on to that The Imitation of Life was a big movie that influenced you. And then Offset, you brought up The Imitation of Life. And Mahalia Jackson's role in there was something that was truly important to you. Then, which is weird here, then Black Caesar, Hell Up in Harlem with Fred Williamson, which is like, these are like two
it's
ends
too
of
different.
two ends of the spectrum, you know. But I get it though, because I like this one over here, but I also like
And
this one over here.
they're our stories. They're our American stories. You know, it's not. It's like it's not. I say we tell our stories and not let them say it's a black story. No, it's an American story, but it's our stories. It's because we couldn't live those lives and experience them in no other place other than here. So those are our stories. So Mahalia Jackson, the Imitation of Life is our story. Black Caesar is our story. That's both. That's the end, and that's two both their ends, but they're both our story. They come together. They meet somewhere. They inspire each other. You know, because even Black Caesar, if you notice, Black Caesar, he loved his mother. His mother was a maid, and she worked for this white couple. And he bought the home and said, "Mama, this is our house. This yours," and all of that. So he was entrenched.
That was a big deal for him.
And the mama thing in our communities is a big thing. You know, respect and power for your mother. And it's the same way with Mahalia Jackson. It's about a daughter. I mean, Mahalia Jackson with the Imitations of Life is about a story between a mother and a daughter and what drew them apart. And it's crazy because like when I was doing marketing for the movie, like they asked you a lot of questions so they could know how they want to brand you, pushing you through marketing. And one of the questions came up about the movie Imitation of Life. And I called home and was asking my sister, and I was telling her that, you know, my grandmother made me watch this movie. She was like, she made all of us watch that movie. You know, she's deceased right now, God rest her soul.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, yeah, she made all of us watch that movie. And come to find out, the reason why she made us watch it because her mother gave her away because she was dark skinned. So her mother gave her away and kept the other kids because they was lighter. And she was born in 1929. So she gave her away and sent her away just because she was dark skinned. And you know, that's the context of the story and whatnot. So it was very personal. She wanted us to like never judge each other who was light, who was dark or whatever. So that's why she wanted us to watch that.
That's good. That's very, very deep. Okay, so fast forward a little bit and you put out this freaking amazing fucking movie called Anonymous Killers. Yeah. I didn't know what to expect, but I watched this movie twice. And the first time I watched it, probably 5 minutes in, I said, "Oh, I'm gonna love this shit.
Yeah,
this is a good movie." So I got a couple questions.
Okay,
let's talk. So, one, where did the creation of this concept come from for this movie? Because it's really left field. And then two, what was the point that you were trying to get across to the people in this movie?
Well, the movie came about. Somebody I associated with in prison, a tiny good guy, actually from around closely where I live at, and he was leaving the dorm one day. I was going back to the prison dorm, and he was leaving. I was like, yeah, I asked him where he was going, and he was like, he's going to AA. At the time, I didn't even know what AA was. And I was like, AA, what's that? He said, Alcohol Anonymous. I said, you should be going to Killers Anonymous because, you know, he was Italian. And I started laughing. I said, Joe, that's a great idea for a script. And so I started pondering the ideas, way that I could tell a story. I was like, killers trying to prevent each other from killing. That's dark comedy. I was like, that's a hard sell. It's hard to do. It's not really going to say anything. And then I didn't, comedy is good, but I didn't feel that I could do comedy at that time, nor did I want to do comedy at that time. I didn't want to like come out and try to present a film in comedy and like come out and put myself in a box. So I flipped it. I flipped the title to Anonymous Killers and asked myself, who's the anonymous killer? And then I started doing research about killers. And I started doing research and I tied it into my experience and whatnot with the hypocrisy of the judicial system, which I went through at the age of 19. Mm-hmm. And that's how it came about. So and it just grew from there. Once I started developing the story, it just grew, and it even grew to a degree that I didn't even realize until I was in post and watching, like, because it was things in there that I put in there subconsciously that I didn't even know. So my story and my experience was so entrenched in who I was. Things came out without me even realizing that I was doing it. So
that's impressive.
Yeah, so that's why the film has so many layers. Like, people will come and think they're coming to see like a soul or some, but it's really not that. It's so much more.
Okay. And what did you want the viewer to leave with after watching this movie? What did you want them to be thinking or feeling?
I didn't think that a person would get it on all levels.
Right.
I knew that wasn't, but I knew that people would watch. Two people would go and watch it and have a different opinion on what they saw. I knew that, and with that said, I would want, my objective was to make it remarkable in the sense that they remarked on it. Like, so what did you think? Like something, a film that you could go and talk, and talk about. Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely accomplished that.
Thank you.
Because I definitely, I didn't want to send it to nobody, but I definitely wanted to send it to some people to watch that joint because the joint was good. The joint was really, really good. So another thing in the movie that I thought was really dope was the fact that the characters were very well developed. A lot of times in movies, you kind of have to make assumptions and figure it out, but you didn't do it that way. You did it in a manner where it was very to the point. Okay, I know who she is, he is, she is, he is. Each character, they were defined in clarity. But what was interesting about it was the fact that, once again, when I was doing the history on you, it stated that you learn how to develop characters from jail stories. Please explain.
Well, I'm not going to assume that you ever been to prison. I would hope that not, but it's so common experience again with young Black males, and now even more young Black women. But it's a thing that when you go to jail, like we all gather around and we share our stories, how we came to jail. We share our nights when we party. We share our relationships. We share our hearts. We bond. we tell these stories, and like some of the stories that I would hear would be unbelievable, but they true because nobody can make this shit up.
That's
you know what I'm saying?
That's right.
So in doing that, like I knew that the most, for me, I realized that environment really plays a major part on character development. You know, environment and experiencing the things that you go through dictate the way somebody's going to react in certain situations where you put them in. You know, this person a person that's been abused their whole life and whatnot, and a person who lived a family life, you put those same two people in a confrontation situation. The person that been abused is going to handle it a different way. The person that lived a life that hadn't been abused. So all the things that we went through dictate. So if I wanted a character to react a certain way, and I wanted to, it could be so far-fetched as long as I grounded in the reality of an environment or their past experience or an experience that an audience can believe that can happen. That's possible, you know?
So once again, you accomplished that.
Thank you.
You definitely accomplished that. I really like, you know, I ain't gonna lie to you. I'm watching the movie and I'm looking for flaws. Like really, I'm looking for something that says, this shit is just all right. This shit is just okay. But the shit was good, right? So then it leads me to ask this. So I'm watching the movie, and then it gets to a part, and it's like, okay, we're gonna vote, and who's gonna die? How did you decide who was gonna die in this voting process? How did you figure out how to play this out to make it make sense?
How I did it was that's the process that, for me, emulated my experience in the sense that when we, as young Black males or whatever, when we go to prison, like we're never really truly judged by our peers. Like people that come from the same environments we are, they get striked by the prosecutor. They strike them, they remove them from the jury, whatever, or they confess that they would be biased because we look like familiar to them, a child or whatever, so they be removed from the court. So the sense is that it was killers judging killers, and how I looked at it, I was trying to predict, and the judging of who would go is who the audience would side with, who the audience most would have empathy for, who they relate to. So that's how I decided, like, who, based on their stories, their backgrounds, and what they've been through in life, who would the audience be most sympathetic to.
Okay, so is that why you chose Lucia as the person to survive? Because of what it seemed, listen, I'm paying attention to this thing. It seemed like what she did made the most sense. Like you like,
exactly.
I'm not as mad at her for doing what she did because of the way her situation played out.
Yes. So in that sense, I looked at it like that first, like I said, but as I watched the movie, that's what you get. But for real, like everybody, what makes her say nobody really likes rich, snobbish people. Nobody really likes him. So that's what makes people empathize with her more. Everybody's always been in a predicament where they had somebody who thought that they was better than them because of their riches or their society or whatever. So I think in the end, after watching it, that prevails more relatable to people opposed to her backstories. There will be those who relate to her backstory, but on a mass general level, it's the fact that she went through what she went through because of those who was rich and powerful and manipulated the situation and have her go through what they went through.
It does resonate with a lot more people.
Yeah.
That's good. Good. Yeah. I didn't think about that. That's
But originally it was her story. But as I watched it, I said, wow, the fact that nobody, like, even like if you look at the characters that she's up against in her child, you like, wow, like that's this bitch. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
so,
facts. How does the judicial system in real life compare to the judicial system that you created in the movie?
It's just crazy because it's a history of the judicial system.
Okay.
It's not just like it's what I'm gonna say this, and I'm not gonna relate it to the movie. In medieval times, right? I'm gonna go to the European society. In medieval times, they used to have public executions, right?
Yeah.
So people would come out there and they put a bulletin and they come out, we executing these people for these crimes, whatever. And they would come out and they would be throwing stuff, and we throwing stuff at the prisoners, shouting and screaming. But among them would be that person's loved one. They're sitting watching the person die. So the person throwing stuff is looking at the loved one or the family members of the people that kill it. And then you got some people, aristocrats, like rich noblemen, standing up on their towers of their castles watching this. And they singing it, barbaric and the barbaricness. So eventually through time, they saw how barbaric and humane it was because they had the mirror, they had loved ones, you had both victim and loved ones did. So they kind of moved away from it over the years. They moved away from execution that way to the point where it is today. And the point there is today is no growth because people look at the executions of people now as being easy, or they get a lethal injection. So it's not that painful, it's not that barbaric. So there's no more growth in humanity when it comes to the death penalty because nobody sees it. You know what I'm saying? It's not public anymore, but it's still society's most powerful tool to us is the threat of death for crimes. So what it is, that mirror's not there no more because nobody sees the victim, and they're not standing there to look at the other person's pain and see how unhumane it is because they figure, okay, we moved it away, but they never really got away with it. They just cleaned it up and took it out the public eye so the public can't really judge it.
So you don't feel no way. There's
exactly.
no empathy for
There's
it
no
anymore.
empathy. They separated it from you. Whereas before it was empathy because you witnessed it. Everybody witnessed it. You seen the pain of the person who loved one it was, or you seen the victim and whatever. And they was like, this is unhumane. We got to do better. We can't do this. This is barbaric. This is not what a civilized society does. And so they cleaned it up. And now nobody cares anymore because nobody's seen it. Nobody's witnessed. There's no more mirror. There's no more growth in humanity. It's still death.
The system itself that we exist in is very good at maneuvering things so that you don't see it, it's there, but if you really pay attention, it's there, like it's really there.
It's the same.
And it allows us to perpetuate lives, not realizing that we're in the dark.
Perpetuate humanity, a civilized society, but for real, it's no difference between then and now. It's still the same. It's just that people are not being able to see it.
No, one thing I do give to the powers that be is they spend a lot of time thinking about these things. To beat us to the punch 99 times out of 100. Like if you really sit back and you be like, damn, they really planned that? God damn, how deep did they have to go to plan that, to make sure that we moved in the manner that we did? Like, I think about it like this. So we grew up with hip hop, and when I grew up in hip hop was broad, meaning it wasn't just one thing; it was several things. You had the power to the people, you had the streets, you had the niggas who like to have fun, you had the native tongues who were on something different. But now they've taken rap music and they've condensed it into one thing. Yeah. And if you can't fit inside of this space, it's going to be very hard for you to exist.
You couldn't exist. Yeah.
And they want the thing they push forward the part that doesn't allow us to grow
To
mentally.
grow, exactly.
And so we continue. We don't realize that the more you hear this stuff that you're listening to, the more that you're going to move in the direction of what you're listening to.
It feels to you, those things, and no
Yeah.
question. It plays on your subconscious. You don't even realize it's happening, what's happening to you, but subconsciously, those things, they affect you.
All day.
Mhm.
All right. How hard was it for you to pick the characters for your movie? Because they were pretty good.
It wasn't. It wasn't. Like I said, it wasn't hard because they were inspired by other directors. Like Lucy Lopez story was inspired by Robert Rodriguez. Like reading his book, I read his book, Rebel Without a Crew, and that book inspired me. Like he made a movie with 7,000 and sold it for 5 million in the '90s, and so it really inspired me and how he did that. So that story was kind of based on. Originally, I was hoping I would one day pitch the story to them and have these certain directors do these parts. The Italian part was based on Scorsese. Like I liked a lot of his movies. I used to do it. Growing up in the '80s, living and being on the streets, we loved gangster movies and all that stuff. Like I don't watch Capone biographies. You already know, I love Black Caesar. And that's what I was doing basically with every character. So I kind of like molded the characters after something that those directors would direct. And the professor, I was thinking like Quentin Tarantino.
I saw that. I
I
felt that in there. Definitely.
Yeah, Sonnenberg on the African guy's story. I was thinking Sonnenberg. So I was thinking all these different directors, and I was like, I didn't even think that I would be directing. I just knew the only movie I wanted to direct was the script that I would one day write for my book. And but I really was like thinking that it would be a wow me coming into the industry before I got to direct, because that's usually what they do to you. But then I got in the industry, so I started seeing how narrow-minded people was, like how in a box, how they thought everything had to go the industry way. Like if I would have waited the industry way, I probably would have never made a movie. You know what I'm saying? So I took the initiative, which is my hustler mentality from the streets, and said, like, I'm gonna make it happen the same way. Singleton probably made it happen. Spike Lee made it happen. Whoever you got it. Nobody's gonna believe in you like the way you believe in you. So you got to get behind it and just figure out a way to make it happen. Like every day, like that would be on my mind. Like how I'm gonna finish this movie, how I'm gonna make this movie.
That's real shit. Okay, so I'm gonna may say a quote, and I want you to explain it so I can understand it, and the people who are gonna watch understand it. Martin Scorsese makes sense of senseless killing. Explain that.
The environment, it goes back to the character development that I spoke of earlier. In that environment, it makes sense. But to a person who has no knowledge of that environment, it doesn't make any sense. So growing up the way we grew up in the streets, like that makes sense to us. It makes sense. Like, and even to the point that like the whole culture of the mafia culture makes sense to the general public. They love it. Like they've been devouring it for years. It's not as big a genre as it used to be, but it's still, they got a lot of classic mob movies, and it's just like that violence is like on the screen is acceptable because of the environment that it takes place in.
Makes sense. Okay. What was the goal of this movie for you from a business standpoint and from a viewer standpoint?
The goal of this movie was for the movie from an artistic standpoint was to get people thinking about the criminal justice system and how the whole juror of your peers process was a scam, and just to show the hypocrisy of society in general. That was the goal of from an artistic standpoint of the movie. From a business standpoint, when I was in prison, I used to read like a lot of industry trade magazines, and I knew that Black films didn't really have a global audience. Like, and we're talking like in the '90s, early 2000s, and stuff like that. So I knew that we really didn't have a global audience, and it wasn't because people couldn't relate to our stories or identified our stories. It was more so because they weren't being presented our stories. So I figured if I do a multi broad demographic first film, that I would get in those markets, and then later on they would realize, oh, it's a Black director, and then they would, once I do stories more relatable to my experience on the surface, unlike this is relatable to my story, but on the surface you would never know it. Then the curiosity from the first movie would pan over to the second, though it was, a movie that normally wouldn't be promoted globally.
You know what's interesting about that? And I wish I could remember the name, but there's a young black designer right now that he's really hot. Damn, I'm mad at myself. I don't know the name.
Yeah.
And when he started out, he never let anybody see him.
Yeah.
Because he was so concerned that if they knew he was black, that they wouldn't jump on it. So he stayed in the dark until it blew up. And then when they saw that he was black, they were shocked.
Exactly.
Oh, and when I say he's black, he's black. I watched him. He was on this show, and they wanted him as a judge. And I'm watching the show. It's some fashion show. And he didn't like the way they was handling it. He got up and walked off. He said, I can't even be a part of this.
Yeah.
I'm out.
Yeah, no question.
And I was like, oh, I like homie. He's standing on his morals. Exactly. You don't find that a lot.
Exactly. And that goes to a lot of things, because like a certain type of film is expected. Like a lot of times people be like, and they be like, oh, we would have never thought you did this movie. We would have never, whatever. Because there's an expectation of what a black movie is, or a movie done by a black director, or a black writer. And we allow that to be, we allow that to be. We allow to be allowed them to put us in boxes, put us in what's mainstream, what's not. Like our stories are just as mainstream as Forrest Gump. You know what I'm saying? So we got to stop that. And the way we do it, because like I said, a lot of times when you go in to the people to get the money for the movies, like they already got the boxes waiting that they're gonna put you in.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying? Right. So because they are fine, they got the distribution, they got the financing for the movies and stuff like that. So the way we get around that is that we gotta finance the artists in our community to tell our stories, which is an American story, and that's how we do it.
I can't leave this out of that. I think that one of the problems is, from our standpoint, is we want to make money, and we put money as the first priority. And sometimes I don't think that the money should be the first priority.
It should be the art. Right. When you're in film, it should be the art. It should be the art. And of course, you want to make money so that you can make more movies. And that's why you should concentrate on the art, because if the art is prolific, it's going to do what it's going to do, The money is going to come secondary. Just concentrate on the art.
Well, I have to say that I'm extremely impressed by your first showing and your movie. My question here is, how satisfied are you with where you're at, how the movie is doing right now, and where is it going?
I'm glad. I'm elated. Like the response, like the reviews, and the way people receive the movie, and the feedback I've been getting from it. Like it's great. Like it just keep growing daily. The more we get out, the more we talk about, the more we market the film. Like I said, to let people know that it's a man of color behind this movie.
That's
you know what I'm saying?
That's right.
And though it may not look like it, it's my story. Like literally, it's my story. It's my experience in the judicial system. So, like I couldn't ask for a better outing for a first film.
I like that. Okay, so what is your wildly important goal to accomplish? I call it the wig.
Right now, because I'm a goal.
And it doesn't have to be the movie,
mostly,
just period.
Period, yeah, exactly. So me, like I'm sort of goal oriented. I need a goal. I need an objective.
Always.
Daily, I need a daily objective. I need to have something that I'm moving toward. So that keeps me centered. So like I try to, like right now, like I got this movie out. My next goal is to do the next movie. That's like my next goal. Like that's what I'm thinking about right now. Yeah, I got the movie done. I got it ready to go and all of that.
What's the name of it? Demise?
Yeah, exactly. Demise. So I'm ready to go with the next movie. Like and the reason being, because like I said, with COVID and the way it reshaped the industry, there's such great opportunity right now for anybody with relevant content. If you have relevant content, It's about who can grab an audience right now, because even the industry, like they fighting, like the studios
To
and
figure it
whatnot
out.
is fighting. They fighting right now, and there's inner turmoil. Like you got Warner Brothers right now, who's releasing all of their top big director films to straight to HBO Max. That's causing an uproar in the industry. So because everybody is buying, they need them viewers for the streaming networks such a matter that they're willing to sever their relationships with these like Christopher Nolan, these top-notch directors, just so they could build up their platform. Because if you don't have a streaming platform that's
You
relevant
dead.
moving, you're dead. So it's such a great opportunity right now because we as independent filmmakers has the same outlets that the studios have. So that's why it's so relevant. So I really want to get to my next film, even while this one is being promoted, for the simple fact that I get that content out there and let people know that this wasn't a fluke. I have something to say. I have content that really speaks to us.
Well, I believe, my brother, and I'm never one to say things that I don't 1000% agree. I'm a fan.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I'm a believer.
Thank you.
I'm a supporter.
Thank you.
And I'm gonna share this movie.
Yeah.
And let everybody know after I send it to them, there's a black nigga wrote that.
No question. No question.
Because you did a great job at getting it out there and not saying black movie, but still
it's a
saying black movie.
Whispering. Yeah. And the thing about it, like, is that the movie, it has so many layers, and it's not just the characters are so multiracial, and it's in so many different stories that's relatable on so many different levels.
Every one of them. Every one.
What did you think about the classroom scene?
Oh, the classroom scene was illmatic. Oh my gosh, I was like, but what made the classroom scene even doper was the fact that you did two things. So you drew a picture of what you wanted the kids to learn, right? And so the being in the front row and the proximity, and if you fall back, that's your chance. But you also did something else. So you got the white woman who's the teacher outside. She's watching him. So now, right after me watching through the movie, I said, "Oh, okay, that was a sign for me to identify that there's something wrong with this motherfucker right here." Because when she came in, he turned into a totally different person. Yeah. And then even when he was walking down the street,
but it was subtle though.
It was well, once again, I'm a buff. So I identified. I was like, oh, that was something right there. I fuck with that. All right. So we got a couple more questions. And
take your time, bro. I'm enjoying it, bro. I'm enjoying it, bro.
So
I love the platform, man.
If you had an opportunity to speak to the younger you, what would you say to yourself about hustling, streets, drug dealing, and all that you did then, based on the person you are now? Or did you have to go through that to become the person you are now?
That's an interesting question. I know what I would say. Because and I probably had to go through what I went through because the opportunities wasn't there.
That's right.
But had the opportunities been there to understand it, because when I went to prison, I thought Africa was jungle. You know what I'm saying?
Me too.
So when I went to prison at 19, until I met brothers from Africa and people from Africa,
I found out it was a beautiful place.
It was a beautiful day. Like, they really inspired me. That like prison really, the individuals I met in prison really inspired me to show my worth. Whereas when I was in a game and I was doing what I was doing, I was willing to die for it without second thought. Like, I was like, yo, I'm willing to die for this.
Period.
Whatever. And I was in the first time I ever, and this is in my book, the first time I ever went on a block to sell crack. First time I ever went on the block to sell crack. A individual tried to rob me, went up and put a gun to my head. He put a gun to my head and said, give me everything. The block is crowded. There's a bunch of people on the street. And I'm sitting, I'm 15 years old, and I got this dude, he got a gun in my head. He's Jamaican. He sound all type of patois talking.
Talking all that shit to you.
All that shit. And I'm not even like, it's like his voice was distant. Mm-hmm. And I could just see all the people, all the other dealers and everybody just staring at me, watching me, looking, watching me. And I thought, if I give this dude this money, I was like, I can never come
I
back out
can
here.
never come back on
out here
block. I'm toast.
So when he said, give me, I was like, no. I shook my head, no. Looked him in the eye and was like, no. And then he tried to go in my pocket and grab my money, and I went in my pocket and I held it, and I was still like, no, you're not. Like, and he was struggling. He had the gun. He poked me with the gun in my head, and then he took a swing at me. When he took a swing at me, I ducked. He scraped my head, and I loosened up a little bit off the money. He got a couple of bills off the top, and then he just backed up with the gun, like, blah. He looking at everybody. He like, blah. And I held on to it. I remember this old timer walked up to me. He came up to me. He's like, you all right? You all right, young? You all right? I was like, yeah. He's
means
like,
you're good here
right?
now.
And I was good. I was
good
here
now. Yeah, there you go.
But the mentality, I thought it was worth it. That was the craziest shit. Like, in my mind, but I'm calculating, I'm like, all these people here, he's not going to shoot me. That's what I'm thinking, but he could have. You know what I'm saying? He could have been easily.
But it's a test that everybody goes through on the block.
And I knew I was new, so I was like, so that was my introduction to selling drugs. So the point being, like, if I knew the things I knew now, I know that I didn't have to do that. A lot of the reasons why we are the way we are and the predicaments we are is because lack of knowledge, lack of understanding of finance, lack of understanding of who we are and where we come from, self-pride as a people. So for me, I would tell the younger me is that you have within you the power to influence your environment, opposed to being influenced by your environment. But it's so hard when the opportunities is not there. But right now with computers, the opportunities is right here on your phone.
Let me put something on the table. Because I believe that we're right around the same age. The era that we come from, I always tell people, before crack, Black people didn't have nothing. And we always happy with nothing.
Yeah.
And then crack came, and you gave a bunch of young niggas money without understanding. Now, prior to crack, you couldn't go on a block nowhere unless an older nigga said you could come and stand here. Crack allowed you to break all of those rules. But once again, the system that controls the narrative, I realized that was the plan.
Bruh, I was so astute and whatever, and studying or whatever it is that I ever wanted to do, I always try to study it. I don't care when I was younger. If I wanted to learn how to pitch a ball, I went and got a book, because my mother used to always take me to the library when I was like 3 years old. So I always looked for a book for direction. And when I was selling crack, I remember my aunt worked for a number spot for an Italian guy, and I wanted to sell dope. You know what I'm saying? I wanted to get woke. I wanted to branch out. I'm always trying to branch out, and I wanted to get dope. Somebody told me, yo, get dope. So I asked her to introduce me to the Italian dude, and I went and I had a conversation with him. And at the time, now in hindsight, once I wrote the book, I understood it. But in hindsight, when I was talking to him, it came off to me like he was saying, yo, he was like, yeah, when I was doing coke and selling drugs, coke was $60,000 a key, dope was this, that. And but all the people doing dope, they don't want to mess with no young people. He said now crack is going for like $14,000, $18,000 a key. He said, and these young dudes is buying it, and they just out of control. They don't got no sense. Like, what you gonna tell them all? Young dude, 16, 14 years old with like 60, 70, 100,000 that never had nothing.
Not a thing, nigga.
So, but when he was telling me that, I felt like I was on some. I was like, yeah, he's doing that because I'm Black. They don't want, you know.
And it had nothing to do with that.
It had nothing to do with that. It had simply to do that when you. There was no guidance once you got crack money back in the 80s, like nobody could tell you nothing. We was brazen, like we dictated hip hop. The hip hop is like the rappers back then. They came and got jewelry from us, cars from us. Like
listen, listen. Most people don't know those stories. It's LL Cool J used to come on 32nd Street and hang out with these niggas, and all the rappers, everything they got. They got from the drug dealers. I tell people, so let me give you an example here. So I have a partnership with a couple of brands. I have a partnership with Starter, and I have a partnership with Sergio Tashini. Because
I used to go get those sweaters from AJ Lester.
Exactly. And so Sergio Tashini, they did this video or whatever story, and they used the DJs to tell a story. And so I watched it, and I said, this is not right. So I calls the owner of the company. I say, yo, Chris, I'm not mad at what you did. I get it. But you can't tell the story of Sergio Tashini without telling the story of the hustler. Because the hustler is the one that moved from New York to DC, where niggas saw Sergio Tashini for the first time,
Crazy.
and then brought it back to New York. If you're not telling that story, right? If you're not telling that story, you're doing an injustice. So once again, us, where's rap without the drug dealer?
Nowhere. Like,
there's no rap without a drug dealer.
Yo, and it's so crazy. It goes deeper than that. It goes deeper than that with rap. Like, for the simple fact, like I told you earlier about the special that Nightline did when I was in prison on hip hop, right. And that was when Jay-Z and DMX was the hardest rapper. But rap literally did fulfill Martin's dream, bro. Rap really fulfilled Martin's dream because it brought people together. Like the kids, all the white kids that took to the street right now because they grew up in the culture of hip hop. They had friends that they partied with and hung out with, and they saw the injustices done to them and all of that. So now when all this stuff was happening, they took to the street. Like they got to meet the parents of their white friends and so forth and all that. And they so entrenched in our hip hop and hip hop culture. Hip hop really like is the melting pot that brought us all together. Like on a global scale. On a global scale, they love us that's one of the things that I learned when I went to federal prison what I learned was how much we were held in high esteem in foreign lands through people that I met from other countries. And they would tell me like, yo, like to see a black man from America, we automatically think he a ball player, something like that. Cause we seen what y'all went through. We seen it. To see you standing in our country, like that's like we in awe of that. You know, so a lot of they inspired me to live up to the greatness how they see me. These are European people from Morocco or not. Well, Morocco's not Europe, but these are European people from that I met from like either Spain and other people, Morocco or whatever, telling me, you know, how they see us as black men standing on foreign lands. So all of that played a part, but hip hop really like played a part in bringing us together as a people, as Americans through generations and whatnot. So it played a major part.
Okay, I know I wasn't supposed to go there, but we had to go there. All right, so I had started my own series called Behind the Velvet Rope, and my history is literally I've been in Atlanta since I left New York, came to college, and so I started this series, and it was really just to put a light on nightlife, music industry, and all the different things. So in working on my series, one of the things I picked up was I would, in the midst of doing history, I would pull certain pictures from Instagram that spoke to me that I would speak to the person about. So I'm going to go through that with you before we close out. All right? So
the actors class, they do things like that too.
Okay, so you see this picture right here?
Yeah, naughty head kid.
Right, you know what I'm going to show next?
yeah, no question. That statue. Yeah, the thinking man.
I just thought that was dope that you really, when you can understand and put the two parts together, and then I look at the movie and I say, oh, this is really a thinking man.
I've been thinking since then.
Yeah, and so.
Yeah, my mother, thanks to my mother, you know, she took me to the library. That statue was in the library.
Oh, that's crazy. Okay. This guy, the young guy, and this guy, the grown guy.
Yeah.
When you look at these two pictures, what do you see?
Wow. Yeah, I see the growth. That's my 50th birthday. That's the only birthday I ever celebrated.
I know. I read that because you're not big on birthdays.
I'm not big on birthdays. Right. I'm big on life.
I thought, but once again, you look at this guy and you're like, he don't give a fuck.
I look at that picture and I think about the pain. I think about the people I lost, the guys that's not here. I think about how lost I was, man. It's like that's the guy who allowed the dude that thought that selling crack was more important than his life when the dude put the gun to my head. Right. So like I was just lost, bro. I was so lost, but you couldn't tell me that back then.
But look at you now.
Yeah.
Look, I mean, it's if this ain't growth, I don't know what is, bro. This is growth in its highest form. Explain this to me.
Salvatore Dali. Mm-hmm. I don't do drugs. I am drugs. That's a dope ass statement. You know, and for an artist, and I could see him saying that as an artist, his art to those who are into his art is intoxicating.
Okay. All right. So then we saw this.
My daughter.
This. And the one that really moved me was this.
Rockstar man.
So is this your only child?
Yeah, that's my only child.
Okay, so I have one child, a daughter. Yeah. It's everything to me. Yeah. I stopped working and all kind of stuff to make sure that I could spend time with my daughter to help develop her properly. And when I saw these pictures, I felt like I saw the same thing.
Yeah, no question. Like, definitely.
How long has she been playing the guitar?
She like probably like 2 months now. Like, cause I always try to get her like really into doing things, like to try to find. It's important that we find our children's like passions, like
Mhm.
because
Yes.
it's easy when you know what they are into to get them to push them in that direction.
How proud were you when you finished this book?
Like I finished that book in prison, right? And just writing it, like that's when I learned that like that's what really made me really be more goal orientated. Because I started out writing this book on legal pad and pencil, and I had a friend send me a typewriter, and then I typed it, and I watched the pages grow and grow and grow, and then I completed it, and it was like such an euphoric feeling
Mhm.
to be able to take that from my mind and translate it into paper and have it there and whatnot. So once I did that, it was like I got to do another one. I set another goal. So that really made me goal orientated to understand that I could take something from my head and manifest it into the
Realize.
physical and then present it to the world. That's powerful, bro.
Okay.
That's a powerful 3-step process.
How often do you tell yourself this?
I got to. I tell myself that like I don't.
It's
I
like a
don't,
mantra for you.
Yeah, in a sense that talent, true talent, something good can't be denied. So if you want to make it in an industry where the chances of making it is slim to none, you got to be so good that they can't ignore you. You know, and in doing that, when you try to copy the trends or what everybody is doing, you're not. You can never accomplish that by copying other people. So you got it. Nothing is new. There's no story that hasn't been told, but it's how you tell it and the way you tell it. That's what makes it different. The structure and so.
Okay. Now, unlike you, right? I didn't grow up reading. I didn't become an avid reader till I was probably 38 years old. And probably since 38, I probably read about 300 books.
Yeah, wow.
Okay. And so this is one of these books I haven't read, but I'm going to make sure to read this. You read this book?
James Bowen. Yeah, I read it because when I went away, a female I was dealing with at the time told me to read the book because the story reminded her of me. And so I read the book. And at the time, I was just getting into like black authors and stuff like that. I wasn't really into James Bowen. That book put me into studying James Bowen, Lorraine Hansberry, Richard Wright, Tommy Morrison, Maya Angelou, like so many black authors that I just really got put onto from this
book.
girl. And she's deceased. That's what Demise, my next film, Demise, is in memory of the young lady who was actually my first love, and she got murdered while I was in prison.
Oh, I saw that picture and I didn't put
Yeah.
Damn, I didn't put that
together. So she gave me that book that kind of like, it's crazy now because that's just coming to me. She gave me that book that she actually introduced me to James Bowen.
That's crazy.
I didn't even know who he was at the time.
Okay. I'm done, right? So once again, it's for me, what's really, really important is being able to say, damn, this guy went to jail for 18 years and came back out. And you've jumped past niggas and people, excuse me, who've been out for 18 years, who just.
Yeah.
What made you so driven that you made sure when you came out you were gonna make a difference? Last question.
The hate, the hate in the system that persecuted me. I want a voice, I want to speak out against the system. I want to inspire other people to know that it's a lot of great minds in prison, man. So like I done had some of the most profound conversations I will ever have in my life with another convict, their insight, and it's just so much, so many great minds and talents being wasted in prison. And I just want people in prison to know that, just because you're in prison, like your gift is still with you, man. You just gotta find it. It took 10 years for me to find my inside of prison to find out what my purpose in life. But that's the most. A lot of times we lost, and it could start early with parents. My mother gave me my gift, which was books, literature, reading, and in the process of thinking. But I strayed away from it, and I didn't get it. It took me 10 years to get back to it because in the struggle of her trying to better our life, she didn't really have the time to really pay attention to me, So that's how I went astray, But yeah, it's just about if you like people really don't understand like their true ability, like the true ability of the mental, like if there is nothing you can't do, literally, like it sounds cliche when people say you put your mind to it. But if you don't believe me, just look around. Look at everything around you. Look, everything, the planes, those, all you looking at is somebody's thoughts. Everything you see, every physical thing you see in life is somebody's thought if it's not by nature. And if you believe in the Bible, before there was the creation, there was the thought. So everything begins with a thought. There's desire. You think about something, that's desire. And through action, you manifest it, you create it. So there's nothing you can't do. It's the problem that people make is they put time limits on it. And when you put a time limit on, you don't make that time, you get discouraged. Just keep doing it and pushing for all get up until you get it done. There's no stopping. You just got to keep pushing toward it. Don't put a time limit on it.
I was going to ask you to give some advice, but you just gave it. And so I'm just going to say thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for the opportunity, my brother, to let me have this conversation with you.
Yeah, no
but
question.
I look forward to the day that you're standing on the throne where you need to be.
No question.
I believe that it's waiting for you.
Yeah, thank you.
And
I appreciate it.
I just need you to make sure that when you do get there, right? So one thing you said, I like to hold people to certain things, right? And one thing you said was there are a lot of great minds behind the wall.
So many.
Make sure that you go back and get some of those great minds.
No question. Definitely.
All right?
Definitely. No
All right.
question.
Thank you.